So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Naveen, and I'm from the 2001 batch. Many thanks to Professor Ganesh and the Alumni Committee for arranging this session. Well, first, let me start by disclosing what makes me uniquely qualified to talk on this subject. Even before I came to Indore, I was studying business in grad school. I was simultaneously pursuing my chartered accountancy. I'd completed the intermediate level, was interning at an accounting firm. I was more oriented towards finance, with most of my electives being finance or IT. Well, in this clean slates of finance and IT electives, there were two shady electives, so as to say. One was strategic marketing. Well, I took this one for brownie points. The course was being taken by our then director. It was a smart move. And the second one was, a course in Salesforce management, which I took because I found the professor very intriguing. That Salesforce management, I had never heard of such a subject. How bad could it be? And that was all, what was my orientation towards what you can typically call as sales and marketing. As time progressed, I did my summers in infrastructure finance. And in my heart, I was very sure I would work for a bank in a swanky office in Nariman Point, if not better, till I ended up in my first job in a dark, damp warehouse in suburban Patna. So yes, I am indeed uniquely qualified to talk about being accidentally in sales. Well, in my over 2 decades in sales, one thing I like to call out is I would have met more than 1,000 salespeople. Many of them would have worked with me. Many of them I would have interacted, interviewed, so on and so forth. Well, with the exception of maybe one or two, none of them wanted to be in sales. So thousands of people just end up being in sales without wanting to be in sales. People want to be engineers. People now want to be managers, want to go to IMs. Thanks to Shark Tank, people also now would want to be entrepreneurs. But trust me, still nobody wants to be in sales. And yet there is a very, very high probability that no matter what you do, what industry you choose, what function you specialize in, you are going to end up in a job in sales sooner or later. Professor Ganesh, I hope BCG will still be one of the top companies on campus today. So let's take an example, guys, everybody wants to work for BCG. Let's hope you do a summers, you do a good job, you get a PPO, you get placed, you start working as an analyst. You impress people by working 20 hours, not sleeping much, not having a life. You get promoted, become a manager, start managing projects. You do this back on back, crack it big time. With a decade of more of such slog work, you become a partner. Well, what is a large part of being a partner in consulting? Sales. You need to get business. So you started in consulting, but ended up in sales. And, that's why we end up having so many jobs in sales. And while you want to be in sales or not, you will end up in sales sooner or later. Most of our jobs, be it any sector, end up being in two functions. One, which is the product or the service creation function, traditionally manufacturing. And second is sales. And these occupy maybe as much as 80 to 90% of the organization's workforce. Most of them might be blue collar, but given the size of the function, even the white collar jobs in these functions end up being significantly more than any other function in the organization. So, you are likely to end up in sales, even in FMCG, which is typically known for marketing. And we teach a lot of marketing with FMCG examples. The hard reality is, even for managerial talents which get recruited from IIMs, sales jobs outnumber marketing by at least 4 times. So, as you spend a lot of time in campus on marketing, research, etc., do remember that sales, while being a less understood, less desirable, is still the largest employer for managerial talent. Well, going a bit, back in time to see how the sales function evolved, overall and as in the country. If we were to have got placed, let's say 50 years back in the year 1972, you might have come across a very unique role, in consumer organizations. That role goes something by the name as branch allocation manager. For all of those who are thinking I'm joking, no, such a role did exist. It was a very powerful and a very integral source, role, and it was very powerful because those were the days where, it took a few years to get a scooter. It took even more years to get a car, and having a telephone at your house really meant that you are someone. So, in times of those, supply was constrained, and it was a purely seller's market. As markets evolved, as capacities improved, constraints got removed, people started producing more number of products, even similar products with more differentiation. Soap was not just a soap. Soap came in red, white, and pink and green. It came with fragrances of flowers and exotic French perfumes. But these benefits were little, and hence with these little, lesser understood benefits, more fuzzy benefits, the market started moving from what being a seller's market to a buyer's market. And that is how sales started becoming an important function. But is sales important in every organization? No, I think sales is an edge function only in few organizations, only in few situations, in few industries. And to me, the crux of it is that whether sales as a function has an ability to influence consumer choice or demand. Let's take an example. We have two products. There's an Apple, latest iPhone 13 or 14 or whatever, and there's a mint gum. In which case, sales is likely to be an edge function. Well, while Apple might be more glamorous, at the end of the day, it's a technology company. And Apple creates demand for its products by coming out with the latest cutting edge technology, which is irresistible for people to come and consume a product. And that is why you see lines, coming up right in the middle of the last year when a new phone is released. You see people flying in from one country to another country to buy the latest phone a week earlier, ahead of time. Whereas a gum is a gum. If you don't find it when you want to eat it, most of us don't have gum on a shopping list. The reality is, if you see a gum at the point of time when you want to eat a gum, you eat a gum. If you don't find gum at that point of time, that is lost opportunity or lost sales for that organization. And hence, yes, for a gum company, for a Wrigley's Mars, sales is a cutting edge function, and it is a function which makes a difference to the life of that organization. Whereas for an organization like Apple, sales is a fulfillment function, wherein you are just meeting the demand, and you are one of the functions, I wouldn't say unimportant, but you are not the function which impacts the organization the most. Career in sales is also very unique, when it comes to the country of India. Typically, if you were to look at what is the role of a sales function, sales manages the value chain between the manufacturer and the retailer. In a country like India, wherein we have hundreds of things in the mix, it's huge numbers. We have around 1.2 crore retailers, thousands of distributors, lakhs of sub-distributors and wholesalers spread across various states with various norms and working ways. Organized trade is only 20%. Mom and pop stores, are all around. And, this creates a certain complexity. This creates a certain way of working, which is very nuanced and very unique to the country. Let's also say these are the same challenges and nuances which keep the sales job very much in demand and very relevant. But the flip side is that a lot of these skills and a lot of the experiences which are picked up are very contextual. And hence, if you were to look at sales job and the portability of the sales job, they are very low. Contrast, if you are an IT person working on AI, or if you're a big data specialist, you can move from a job in Bangalore one day to a job in San Francisco next, very, very easily, very seamlessly. Even you are in a finance or HR, you are likely to be far more employable in an international scene. Sales talent is very local. So if you are a sales talent who's groomed yourself in India, at best you are portable to the rest of Asia or Africa, where your geography skill set is still relevant and entrenched. Uh, However, it's also an entry barrier on the reverse, wherein this is also a likely function where you're not likely to see too many expat coming in and sitting into a job, no matter where. So if you were to today go into US and see, while the BPO jobs have been taken over, the sales jobs are still firmly entrenched with the locals, people who understand the geography and the culture. So it's a two-edged sword, but it's important to understand that sales as a function, sales as a capability set is very geography, very cultural specific, and not really as portable as compared to some of the other competences. If you were to, have read annual reports, and I'm sure, professors would encourage you, especially if you are, interested into consumer businesses or listed companies, to, study, the annual reports. And it would not been, very unusual for you to read statements or, comments made by the chairman or managing directors of some of these large companies, sitting in the country, is that, sales and distribution, our partner network is our competitive advantage. Statements like these have been routinely made by chairmen of Unilever, P&G, Marico, etc., so on and so forth. Having a well-oiled machinery which works like clockwork in an environment which is just as chaotic and fragmented as I described, indeed is an advantage. But what we need to be even more cognizant about is that this environment is changing at a very, very rapid pace. Having great warehousing and transportation does not need massive investments like before. Earlier, large organizations used to own hundreds and thousands of square feet of space. They used to have on dedicated hire, or they used to own fleets of thousands of vehicles. Today, space is available by the pallet size across warehouses, normal temperature, ambient, frozen, all kind of variations are there. You can hire truck space, you can hire flight space by the pallet, by the square meter. And this entire digitization and emergence of new startups in this economy is in a sense democratizing the entire sales and distribution network. And hence the demand and the barriers on the infrastructure side have lowered. B2B, which is, whether you look at from the company to the aggregator or the wholesale business, that is getting digitized. Today, information is available on the fingertips. A farmer sitting somewhere in the country knows what is the best price for his seed available across the length and the breadth of the country. If you are a buyer, you know what exactly you can buy from at which place. And hence this kind of digitization of the B2B space is leading to seamless price discovery. Additionally, the distribution space, whether it be by aggregating companies which are in e-commerce like Udan, your Walmart, etc., or new age professional distributors who are emerging like the way they've been in West, are creating a market environment which is reducing entry barriers for newer players to come in and newer companies to come in. And hence what we emerge as SaaS is not generally a terminology which will remain to software, but sales will also start emerging to become a service sometime in the very near future. And this would be very, very specifically relevant for organizations which do not see sales as a cutting or an edge function for themselves. And hence they will be able to build sales, as a capability, and the reach which comes along with that, at a fraction of the cost and even fraction of a time. The other thing which is dramatically changing the way we look at sales as a function is e-commerce or stroke digital advertising, stroke digital marketplaces, digital selling. And we've never ever had traditionally a full visibility of the sales funnel. How many people looked at our product? How many were interested? Who bought? Who did not? Were they willing? If they did not buy, were they willing to buy at a lower price? This was the kind of information which was never available. We at best took some pot shots through some market research, which was as best with a certain amount of accuracy. But now we have live transacting data on our fingertips. And, in short, the kind of information which we have is leading to, decisions being far more data-based, and decisions being changed, and decisions being fine-tuned at a speed which has never been seen before. In a typical environment, building a communication and running a communication was a 3-year cycle. If you were running, a soap brand in the 90s, developing a new insight and getting a communication and then running it and then moving on to something else would have been a 3 to 4 year cycle. Today, in the era of e-commerce, people are trying out more than 2 or 3 communications in a single day. And we change the communication basis what feedback comes in. So the pace of the scale, the pace with the data, with the visibility, the pace and the speed at which things are moving are changing. What's also happening is, what I will call as convergence of point of communication and point of sales. Typical role of marketing was, we create an advertisement based on a certain insight. We run it on TV so that we are made aware of a product. We advocate it continuously with a 360-degree setup like, print, PR, so on and so forth. And then when a consumer ends up going to a neighborhood store, they see the product and they possibly decide to try it. Making it available at the neighborhood store was the sales job. Now, today, all of this has converged. We see the ad at the same place, we click it and we buy it at the same place. Amazon, which is the largest seller, is also the place where most of the people come for discovery. So today, it's very fuzzy to say whether Amazon is the largest, awareness creation platform or is it the largest marketplace. But there is a convergence which comes in, and all of this is happening wherein the consumer and the companies can directly communicate. And in a sense, the sales and marketing jobs, which were separate jobs in the past, will converge again. And, I put it up with, a single example. If you were trying to sell a car in the 1900s, let's say in US, India didn't have cars in the early 1900s. But let's say if you were selling a car in the 1900s, you were a manufacturer who set up a shop, you invited consumers to your shop and you explained the product to your consumers, you demonstrated and the consumer wanted to buy, you bought, and the transaction happened. Now imagine a car business in the early 2000s. Massive car organizations, hundreds and thousands of dealers, multiple point of sale, exclusive point of sales, hybrid point of sales, first-hand sales, second-hand sales, car service, and a complicated function wherein you have a sales guy doing his job, there's a service guy doing a job, there's a marketing guy doing a job, and all of this changes when somebody like Tesla comes across and says, I'm going directly to the consumer. I don't have a need for a dealer. And today, Tesla is not the only example. You have players like Mercedes who are trying it out in a big manner. A large portion of industries like hotel, airlines are now directly booking and interacting with the consumers who are going directly on their website and accessing their products and services without any intermediary. So, sales and marketing were intertwined in the future, in the past. As we grew in size, as we grew in complexity, they emerged as separate domains, and within them emerged multitudes of domain. Marketing is not one marketing, sales is not one sales. We created a lot of sub-functions, we created a lot of competency sets. And as we go ahead into the future, at least what I see is all of them converging back into one, where it will be very difficult to engage, but there will be possibly one consumer-centric function from an organization, which will be responsible for the larger funnel and servicing and sales to the consumer. Taking a short pause here, what we spoke about so far was how sales evolved as a function. What are the peculiarities as we go about, in terms of countries, in terms of geography challenges, where does sales add value to an organization, where sales doesn't add value, what is happening with technology, and possibly how do we see, sales evolving in the future. I think let's spend some time in terms of understanding what is the role of a sales stint in the career aspiration of somebody like you who's sitting in as a young manager or a budding entrepreneur, and why is or what is sales going to have a role for you. So, well, first and foremost, I think one thing which the sales function provides, which possibly none of the other functions provide, is offering people a leadership, grooming and opportunity to lead teams from a very, very young and a very early age. And like I said, everyone is selling. What I would also say is that if you are aspiring to do any significant role in any organization, be it your own or be it somebody else's organization, there are going to be two critical parts to your role. One is going to be selling, of course, and the second is going to be managing people. Most of the other functions start off with individual contributing role for a very significant early part of your career. So you start managing teams, you start managing people at a very later stage, whereas sales is one which offers you leadership grooming right from day one. You are going to be subjected to managing large team sizes, complex team sizes, people of cultural background very different from you, people who are going to be much older than you, people who are going to be much younger than you, all kind of combinations are going to be thrown at you, and you are expected to manage and deliver on that team. Things like volatility, uncertainty, they come with the domain of the job. It's not a controlled environment wherein you are sitting and you're working in the market. There are challenges up teen which you're going to face. You're going to learn to have to handle pressure. I've been a sales guy all my life, of whatever I was aspiring to do. Let's say if I would have had, let's say 240 monthly targets, I think I would have missed around 210 of them, if not more. That goes with the part. I don't think so I've done bad, but the part is that, having disappointments and not achieving what you wanted to do in 100% desired state comes very well along with the territory. So, learning to manage volatility, learning to think on your feet, learning to be agile, sustaining pressure, while you know that you don't know how you're going to get the answer, trying to both calm your bosses and your team, that all will be goes very well part with the domain. So, it trains you, if you want to be a boss, if you want to be a CEO one day, it starts training you from possibly day one for that job, and much better than in other functions. They're going to be extensive traveling. So if you like traveling, if you like to understand, people, nuances, it's going to really force you into, going different places, learning different cultures, learning different languages, understanding what are the nuances in culture, in trade, how does a market behave differently in the north of India versus the south of India, and so on and so forth. And you are going to have to manage multiple people, stakeholders or otherwise. There are going to be nuances which you will learn how to navigate. And these things, if you were to look at, are essentially must-have playbook for any senior CXO, C-suite, CEO role, which anybody aspires to do in the future. So, I would just say that sales starts grooming very early. If you are one of those people who really are looking forward to a marketing career, and FMCG companies have beaten you over a period of time saying, no, sales is an important stint and hence you can do marketing only after your first 2 years in sales. And you are really dreading and looking forward that, how do I really cross this 2-year barrier and quickly move to Mumbai or Bangalore corporate office as soon as possible? Then my advice for those 2 years to you is going to be that, build great understanding of trade and sales force. Even if you don't like being in sales, the trade force and the sales force is going to be a very, very important customer for the rest of your life. You might decide strategies sitting in the boardroom. They will prioritize and deprioritize for you. They will check your strategies without you ever knowing it. And hence understanding how this, the large force works, how the sales force works, how the trade functions is very important. If you are looking at becoming a marketeer, then these 2-3 years in sales stint is possibly the closest you will ever get to them. This is your opportunity and window to understand that. This is also a window to understand your customer and channel nuances. At some day in life, you would want to, create offerings and then realize that this offering doesn't work in general trade. This offering works in modern trade. This offering works with a certain consumer set. This doesn't. Well, this is your chance to really understand and build that, build those nuances, build that understanding in time. Strategy is, very, very abused word, especially in business school. We strategize everything. But trust me, it's an equally abused word in the corporate world as well, wherein we have a strategy for everything, delivering at times nothing. To me, strategy, or, the base of any strategy or any sound thing is to really being able to see trend and patterns. And what is a trend and a pattern? Trend and a pattern is nothing else. You see a market research report, you see a macroeconomic review, which indicates you of something. You go to the market and you see a certain behavior of the way stock is arranged or something is happening. You hear a salesman speak something, sir, ye bik raha hai, ye nahi bik raha hai, isme ye problem ho raha hai. You hear a retailer saying, sir, consumer aajkal ye bolta hai. And if you have, the ability to really weave together a pattern and see something, I think that kind of an insight only comes in when you spend time in the market. And this is again your occasion of really trying to hone yourself and build those skills. And if you build them, they are going to be, very, very valuable for you in life. And lastly, I say meet tons of consumers. That's what you're there for. Once, we end up being in corporate offices, we think we meet a lot of consumers, but we don't. Well, if you're not really interested and you really are wanting to be a CEO and that's what you're cut out for, what I would say is that be very clear. Okay, first, if you are looking at sales as a route to becoming, the top boss, it's only likely to happen if you're in an organization, if you're in an industry where sales is an edge function. So if you start off with Apple sales and you want to be Tim Cook, God help you. Not going to happen. If you are looking at that, be very, very mindful. You are far likely to become a CEO selling Coke or, gum than you are going to by, selling an iPhone. A sales guy is not going to make it because that's not the edge function for that industry. Second, understand your P&L very well. Sales guys where mostly people, falter is that they don't, they give a lot of importance and nuances to, people, team management, sensitivity, the softer feel, but they don't give enough importance and understanding to the P&L. Well, P&L is like, reading the pulse of a patient. So if you don't have a very, very solid grasp on that, you are never going to be able to end up in a top job or further, even if you end up succeed in a top job. Third point which I have is that, you can outsource as a CEO. If you're a sales guy, let's say you've not even done marketing, you've not even done anything else. You can get the best of the people to run a factory for you. You can get a great guy to make a TV commercial for you. You can outsource everything, but you can't outsource the key insights and understanding of your business. What is going to work? What is not going to work? What will my consumer accept? What will my consumer not accept? Is something which you cannot outsource as a CEO to anyone else. So, if you are looking at that route, hone those skills, do that. I talked about leadership skills. Leadership skills make most of the difference. Possibly after 7 to 8 years of life, functional skills start becoming less and less important because everybody you are competing with in your life is by and large at a similar level of functional skill evolution. They are as good as you. And even if they are not, they might be slightly better or slightly worse off. It does not matter. What matters more is the softer skills, the leadership skills. And that is what starts differentiating and starts pulling up some people and holding back some people. So invest in leadership skills, invest in understanding yourself, invest in understanding how you react to situations, how you react to people, how you react to things like pressure, etc. And if you do that, you have a, let me say, a good shot, by reaching a top job through a sales route. And lastly, I think, especially in the consumer business with volatility, execution becoming more and more critical, I think today is the time where we are seeing most sales-bred CEOs than ever possibly in the past. And I think this trend is likely to continue, especially in the consumer industry, where sales is and likely to remain an edge function for some time. So I think all I'll say is no matter what you do, where you are, you're always selling something. And the best example to me is our Prime Minister. He's earned the title of being the best salesman in India. So if the Prime Minister is not above sales, I don't know who is. So that's it from my side, and I'm open to any questions anybody might have, comments or reactions, anything.
Floor is open for questions. You can either type in your questions or raise your hand electronically so that he can see and answer your questions.
Ajit, please go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, good afternoon. So that's on Sunday afternoon, it was really refreshing session for all of us. So I have two questions. One is like, probably I'm looking for your comment rather. So you're having history of sales, but I was just going through your profile. Sorry, I was just doing it while listening to you. Okay. So within sales also, you have done into multiple categories, though it was all into food industry. So can you comment about, because definitely the basics of sales, it remains same, but still industry to industry, like even beverage to processed food to something else, definitely there are few things which one has to learn, and probably, during the process, one has to learn. So probably if you can comment about that first. And second is that you talked about that the sales guy, while having his journey towards the CEO or whatever you have objective in mind, so you should learn P&L. Now, learning P&L it's not that easy. I mean, you have covered it into a slide, and I can tell you that finance is altogether a different sector, and that's absolutely right what you said, that many years while doing all these sales activity, our focus is on revenue. That as much as revenue, it means the sales is good. While still, when you reach to a board with your presentation, the P&L is saying something different. The story is altogether different. So definitely you're right. But how you can do that? I mean, while doing sales, it's not easy to learn the P&L, the dynamics of P&L. So if you can little bit throw some light about this. Please.
So thanks, Ajit. I think to the first point on whether there are nuances, I think, yeah, there are nuances when you move from one category to another. When you move from food to beverages, when you move from beverages to personal care, when you move to food, which is a short shelf life product, like you say, a bread or a impulse product like a candy, to a food which is like a staple like an atta, there are nuances in every single thing. But essence of the fundamental principles of how you sell are still very same. I think larger nuances start getting added when your nature of doing sales or who you are dealing with changes. So for example, a larger change would be when you start, rather than looking at a general trade environment, you move to modern trade. I think that's a bigger change. When you are managing an e-commerce, which is directly influencing sales, it's a bigger change. If you are into an environment where there is assisted selling, like say a beauty advisor selling a Mac product, or an Apple showroom trying to sell a product, wherever assisted selling comes in, there's an additional nuance. So I think nuances change on basically both the vector of product, they change on the vector of who you are trying to sell to, what is your demand environment, and hence possibly the point which I was trying to make is it's very contextual. So if you have entrenched, if you are suppose an expert who's built a career in terms of assisted selling for the last 15-20 years, and you are a great you are great at understanding how a beauty advisor works and what is cosmetic selling, that's a very contextual skill set. That's the advantage and disadvantage of a specialization of that level. Coming to the second point which you said on P&L, there are two parts to it. Okay, I think first part is having a certain savviness and adaptability with numbers. Fortunately or unfortunately, some people's eyes light up with numbers, and some people basically get fogged out when numbers come in. Well, if you get fogged out when numbers come in, I don't know what is the way for you, but I can trust me, you are not made for the top job, is what I can say. Because, you need to get more comfortable with numbers. You need to do that. I'm not a psychoanalyst. I can help you with that. But if you are inherently okay with numbers, then the chances that you need to understand numbers for your own role, for your own organization. Now, trust me, if you're a salesperson, you impact numbers in 15, 20, 30 kind of ways. Most of the sales organizations or hierarchy will never trust you with that, because they don't think you are evolved enough to understand and drive those things. So they will translate down the hierarchy saying, you do XYZ. You sell more of product A. The reason behind that is product A is more profitable. It does better for the P&L. It does XYZ. But rather than doing, they will come up with a single, you sell more product A, you get 2 times more incentive. Now, if you are a smart salesperson, you will work with your team, with your organization, and understand the nuances. Okay, what happens if I sell it 3 times? What happens if I sell it 4 times? And, usually most of the organization, most of the context, if you are forthcoming asking these questions, you will get enabled. But if you are not forthcoming, life goes on without you. So, do indulge, do ask those questions is the only advice I give.
Thanks.
Think about the numbers behind what you do.
Thanks, Naveen. Awesome. I mean, I was listening to this. I'm in a financial industry sales. Can't really relate beyond a point to you, because you use that word edge part of it. I think phenomenal depiction of how sales happens in different industries. I wanted to understand a little bit of, you touched upon the culture part of it, North India versus South India. You had a phenomenal stint while you were abroad also in Bangladesh. Any experiences that you could share in terms of what new skill did you see because you were in an overseas assignment in a different product category, or maybe a contrast with what you see in India today?
Let me start off by saying, I think, since you picked up Bangladesh, Mohit, I think the first mistake we all do is that, we carry our experiences too long. So for all places where Bangladesh is a part of India, everybody thinks it is still, portion attached to West Bengal. People forget that there is a 50-year history to that region. It has seen a lot. It has seen more than 20 years of Pakistan rule. It has different, ideology. It has a different religion. It has a different mindset. People have different aspirations. I think the single largest mistake which we do is that, we will say, whatever works in West Bengal will also work in Bangladesh. And I think that is where people, have lost large amounts of money with just that single, I will say arrogance. So I think what expat stint taught me a lot was to be really humble and to really understand. I'm there in part because of what I know, but I am also there. I can't be successful unless and until I don't pick up from the local country, from the local nuances, what is that to be learned and understand and then act accordingly. I might be an intelligent person, but if I were to just count on my past experiences and what has worked for me, I think it will immediately possibly turn into a failure. It was also, a unique opportunity to work in a smaller economy. When we are in India, we usually forget the size, the magnitude of the economy, the complexity of the economy. But I think working in a smaller economy wherein you had a lot of access, you had a lot of access to policy making of the country, you had access to the, let's say a finance minister, you could go up, take up your issues, how you could impact the policy making in a country, how you could actually do developmental work, how you could work, partner with a lot of, because Bangladesh is at least in that point of time was classified as a developing country. It has since moved in out of that status, but a lot of the foreign development agencies work. So how you can work and create sustainability agendas. I think it was an eye-opening journey and experience for us because, a lot of us want to really go and work in developed countries, but not most of us are really excited about working in a lesser developed place than our home country. So in that sense, it was a very eye-opening experience. Thanks.
So Naveen, you mentioned about you mentioned quite a lot in terms of leadership skills. So that's the business I am in. Now, I had a similar question to what Mohit was asking you in terms of geographies. So do you see a difference in, let's say, in people's adoption to trainings across different geographies? Do you see that kind of a difference? Because I have been in the business for not very long, but I somehow see a difference in terms of the receptivity of people in certain geographies versus the others. So is that my bias? But you worked for more than 20 years, so I thought I'd take that answer from you.
So I think there is let me put it, there is an arrogance versus a receptivity to learning. And that straight away goes with the plethora of opportunities. So if you are in geography where the opportunities are lesser, where the development index is a bit lower, where people have not had so much access to, let's say, premium B school education, etc., I think there is far more humility. People are willing to grasp onto whatever they can to help them succeed. And when we get into a typical setup of, let's say, our kind, I think we are far more arrogant and far less willing to learn, far more wanting to depend on our own experiences and our own successes, rather than having the humility to just pause and listen to someone and see if it makes sense. So I think it's more about context and environment. And I think human beings are same. If the context changes and, we face a slap on our head, we are humble to learn. We become very, very quick and very humble to learn. And if we get too much of success, I think it gets into our head. That's my point of view on that.
I've seen another difference, Naveen. So there are two types of organizations. One in which most of these training decisions are driven by the business side. So let's say a CEO or the sales heads typically decide the curriculum or the kind of trainings that would run in the organizations. Another kind of organizations wherein HR is pretty strong and are driven primarily by the HR. So again, you've worked in multiple organizations. So now again, as I told you, I've been only in business for about 2.5, 3 years. So again, kind of a bias. But I believe the companies which are driven by the business side are more concerned about effective trainings rather than the companies that are driven by HR, which are more concerned about their KRAs being met in terms of training. So is that again a bias that I carry, or do you feel there's some substance to that?
No, so I think, whenever a training is being led by a function, it is essentially for an improvement metrics. It's a functional training. It could be typically what seems as a non-functional exercise. For example, I know you do a lot of communication stuff. Now you might say communication is typically not a functional training, but if you are in a job of a sales wherein interacting and making pitches an integral part, then communication is a functional need. And it directly impacts your ability to, make great pitches, win accounts, etc. So I think whenever, a training is being led by a functional head or an agenda, there is a clear before-after scenario which is there in the mind of the head, and that is why there is a drive for that training. So I think in the best examples I've seen in my life, functional trainings are always left to the discretion and should be driven by functional leaders. And leadership skill development is where HR should come and play a role, because that has to happen independent of short-term, long-term business requirements, and it has to be more attuned with building those skill sets which are required for a longer-term success of the organization and people within it. So I think that would be, some of the best examples I've seen in my life. But yeah, it all moves from organization to organization.
Hi, Naveen. Thanks for this wonderful presentation, Arun here.
Hi, Arun.
What do you think of the new digital channels which are coming, like Metaverse and all those sort of things, on the repercussion of these on the sales and sales strategy going forward, especially in the consumer food industry?
Arun, I think very, 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 very real. And, it's just starting to emerge. So I think understanding today and taking out implication, of what and how, us as consumer companies can integrate ourselves into these newer age domains, if I may call them, is something which we are ourselves also not very clear about. But one thing is real, that people are spending millions and billions of dollars on NFTs. People, when they are into places like metaverse, are spending crazy number of millions of dollars behind consuming things which in the traditional sense we will find they are not real, be it a skin, be it whatever. And I think this space is fast evolving, and soon as companies we will learn how to really cater to the demands, how to add value to the consumers ethos, and learn to how to make money in that space. Today, I think most of us, very few of our companies are being able to do a good job there, but the space is very real.
Mm-hmm. Do you think this is kind of a disruptive space, or is like it will become just one of the channels?
I think, it's unlikely to become very disruptive for certain kind of industries. For example, people are still going to need food to eat. Now, you might go into metaverse and ding a virtual drink which energizes you, and you might be willing to pay some dollar because it enhances your metaverse performance. But as long as there is a human body, there is going to be a need to actually physically consume, food, beverage products. I don't think so. This, depending on the industry where you are, not everything is going to get disrupted or go away. But there are going to be implications. For example, today when we see, a Shah Rukh Khan or a Salman Khan endorsing product, tomorrow it might be a metaverse character, who at least I have not heard of today. And I'm sure my son would be more, updated on some stuff than me. And but that kind of change is bound to happen.
Okay. Thanks, Naveen. Thanks.
Naveen, can I ask another one?
Please.
We were talking about, for example, you talked about disruption. I completely understand that disruption in sales process would be very industry specific. I have seen the burgeoning of the social engagement kind of phenomena in which the sales is also happening, or if not the sales, at least the perception about a product is being made or perceived not by metaverse but by social engagement channels, whether it's Insta or whether it is a kind of a gaming company or things like that. I mean, how much do you think in the time to come, given that the Gen Z and the millennials, the way they are consuming this whole sales process, would the companies really need to change their whole sales phenomena or marketing thoughts to align to what's happening around in terms of not so traditional channels?
Even today, Mohit, the world has already changed on that front. Okay, if I were to give you facts, okay, who is the largest advertiser in the country today? It's not Star TV, it's not ZTV, it's not Sony, it's Google. Google is by far the leading advertiser, ahead of the second largest by 2 times. Okay, so that's the kind of space. The world has already gone digital. India with its mobile penetration, with cheap data, with massive amount of broadband connections available, we are consuming data in a very, very different pattern. And if you were to start looking at some of these matrices, it will be actually shocking. So that change is already here. Large organizations which are selling 5 rupees, 10 rupees products are designing and adapting to this change, wherein they have to go to this newer way of advertising, creating demand, newer ways of popularizing their brand. And this change is already here. There are a large number of companies which are in the mid to large scale, which I will call are still digital only companies. And today, these companies are creating phenomenal value. Many of them have reached the unicorn space, even in products which are, typically hardcore consumer products. So the change is already there. I think it started in a big manner around 4 to 5 years back. It's already there.
I think now we will formally end this meeting. So thank you, Naveen.